Monster Hunter Wilds is absolute fire. In this video, we're going to be talking a little bit about the Monster Wilds beta that's going on right now. If you guys haven't played yet, you should absolutely play this weekend. This is easily, so far, from what I've played so far, the best Monster Hunter world yet. And let's get into why that is a little bit. So the beginning of Monster Hunter Wilds has like a bit of a story mission that you go on that kind of introduces you to some basic mechanics, and it's kind of done in this over-the-top Monster Hunter fashion that, you know, your pretty typical Monster Hunter game would have. It kind of acclimates you to the game, it builds a little bit of tension, and it's pretty much par for the course for what you've seen in a monster hunting game. I don't think most people play Monster Hunter for the story. It's kind of lighthearted and fun generally, and it's always good to see it through to conclusion, but it's by no means the biggest part of the game, and I think it's pretty much par for the course what you've seen with other Monster Hunter games here, so that's the first thing. But after this part of the game, I feel like this is where Monster Hunter Wilds really goes in a different direction than previous Monster Hunter titles. I think the thing that you notice almost immediately while playing the beta is the fluidity of the game, the interactions within the game itself between cutscene to combat, between being in a settlement or a town and going out on the landscape are so much more fluid. You feel so much more part of the world than you did previously. This is actually true next generation Monster Hunter in this regard, with redesigns to not only like quest tracking, quest acceptance and completion. The whole general world design leans far more to open world than any previous version of Monster Hunter, and I think about the only thing you can really compare it to potentially is the guiding lands from Monster Hunter World. In previous Monster Hunter games, you'd go to your camp or your town and they felt very separated from the monster locales and the environments of the game. They weren't really connected in the way they are in Monster Hunter Wilds, and you'd usually pick up your quests from a quest board in town and then tackle that one monster inside your instance that gets generated either alone or with other players. And, you know, you might farm that monster for a while in there, but generally speaking, even though you could kind of break off and farm other monsters, it just didn't make a lot of sense to. You would come back if you wanted to do them and take out another quest or expedition on that monster. Just made more sense to do it that way. But in Wilds, things are so much more seamless as your interactions with your environment are right outside of the town that you're sitting in. You can see the landscape outside changing as the weather changes. You can see what's happening in the game world around you and just head out and start doing a quest by, you know, clicking on a monster and setting a quest to do it, because the quest person like follows along with you. And so you're able to just do everything on the fly, and you can make decisions about what you want to do while you're interacting with the game world without having to return and kind of waste time doing that. When you played Monster Hunter World, it felt like you were going on missions until you got to the Guiding Lands part at endgame. And Wilds is an evolution of that part of Monster Hunter World into its own full-blown game idea, whatever you want to call it, which is just genius in my opinion. They took what is easily the best part of Monster Hunter World and just made it into its own game by just blowing up its size and just making it larger than life. Monster Hunter Wilds is essentially Capcom flirting with the Monster Hunter MMO that I've always wanted. When you go out now, you used to have mobs and things and endemic life and stuff like that in Monster Hunter World, Monster Hunter Rise, etc. But now the density and the entire scale, including monster density, is so much larger. And it feels like an ecosystem on its own that exists outside of the player that you just get to interact with and be a part of. It feels like it was designed completely independently of the player, and you kind of get dropped into it to make what you will of it. The environmental design of Monster Hunter Wilds looks the best yet. World felt like a theme park, or like Jurassic Park, where everything was larger than life. The trees were huge, the tankards were huge, the food was huge. Everything was just kind of like overblown in a very humorous and cute way, whereas Wilds looks a bit more on the realism side. It has less of a gamey look to it, if you know what I'm trying to say. And it's more comparable to Rise in its visuals, although I think it's even more realistic and on a much, much larger scale than Rise. I think this is a really intelligent move by Capcom, particularly with Western players. I feel like Western players are going to identify more with Monster Hunter Wilds than maybe Monster Hunter World, even though a lot more Western players played that game than they did previous Monster Hunter titles. I think Wilds kind of brings more of an aesthetic that is maybe something you would expect more in a Western game than previous Monster Hunter titles had. So I think there's going to be a lot more players that look at the gameplay footage of this, play the demo for this weekend, and see it and go, wow, this is a lot more my speed than I realized. And the next really massive and important change that really changes the way that you play Monster Hunter Wilds is the map. The map is absolutely fucking outstanding. And the map allows you to literally see everything in the entire biome that you're in in real time. You can see where the monsters are, what monsters there are, what their strength is, what their threat level is, what they drop you. You can literally see where all the resources are, how long until the monster departs, and when other monsters will be available. And you can literally make decisions in real time about what your next move in the game is going to be without having to return to a hub or go to a camp or anything like that and kind of depart on an expedition. All that information is readily available to you, so you can just go like, okay, I'm planning to do X, and you look at your map and you realize, oh, that monster that I was going to hunt, well, he's going to leave in 5 minutes, so maybe I should do something else so I'm not wasting my time. Oh wait, there's another one spawning in a couple minutes. I'm going to go over to this ore over here and harvest it. Set a waypoint on your map. Your mount rides right over to that for you. You pick it up, maybe go set another one, get a couple more, and then that monster spawns in and you can go do that. You can shoot a flare, summon people into your game world, and go tackle it together instantly. It's all very, very seamless, which is something I was referring to earlier. And it just feels really good. It's almost like, why haven't we been doing this the whole time? This is definitely the best iteration of Monster Hunter in that regard. And you're not going to want to go back to the style that they had previously once you start playing it. And something that I really enjoy about Monster Hunter Wilds too is the seasons they have to the game. If you didn't know, there are actually like 3 seasons inside the game that allow for different monster spawns, and you know, there are like apex predators in each area, and they spawn at specific times and specific seasons. So you're not going to just like be able to hunt any monster at the same time. You're going to have to catch the windows in which these monsters spawn. And I think what this does is it allows for the game to feel like a living, breathing world where you don't have to load out and load in and load out and load in order to populate the monster that you want to hunt. It kind of gives it more of an organic feel where those monsters are spawning in all the time. And what you're doing is very much determined by what events are happening in the game, what monsters are available. And so you're kind of like hanging out and just playing the game as the game comes to you. I think this is the reason that it makes me think a bit of an MMO, because this is kind of what you do in some MMOs, right? Like you log in and you have an idea of generally what you want to do that day or that game session. And then maybe it changes because, oh, this event popped up and I wasn't planning on doing the event, but since I'm here and the event's here, I might as well do it. Or I wasn't planning on farming that boss, but since the boss is here already and, you know, my friends are doing it, I might as well join them. Or there's a lot of people on, so you might as well get in on it. And it has a bit of an MMO-light feel to it. I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean the fact that there's a lot of people you're persistently online playing, and you can just, you know, jump in with other players seamlessly and tackle whatever objectives make the most sense for you. And on top of this, you get 2 weapons now. You'll be able to use 2 weapons. This is something we mentioned in previous videos. Pretty much everyone on the internet knows that there are 2 weapons in Monster Hunter Wilds. But this is huge. I mean, it's hard enough, in my opinion, to master one weapon. And if you didn't know, most of the weapons have different moves now. I've tried playing my hammer today, and let me tell you, like, even though I had played with it a bit before at Gamescom and Tokyo Game Show, like, my combos are all different than they were. There are different moves than there were. A couple staples are in there, of course, and I think that's probably true of all weapons. But they've generally changed the way, for instance, the hammer plays. For instance, you can dodge and keep your charge on your hammer now, which, you know, if you were charging your hammer and you dodged before, you had to recharge it. That you don't have to do that anymore. That's really nice. You can kind of interrupt attacks into different combo chains using the hammer now. And I know I'm talking about the hammer a lot, but you're going to have to learn new moves for your weapons. So if you're coming back from Monster Hunter World or Monster Hunter Rise, you're going to have to spend a little bit of time of picking up that weapon. And it feels like for me that maybe the skill floor for my weapon has gone up, but the skill ceiling has also gone up. So it's take you a little bit longer, I think, to learn your weapon than you did previously. Maybe, I don't know if this is true with all weapons, but I think you're going to be able to do more things with it than you've been previously, and it feels really, really good when you pull those off. And because of this, I'm actually, you know, even though we have 2 weapons, I'm concerned that a lot of people aren't going to be using their second weapon as much as they can, because I feel like it's going to take you a while just to learn that first weapon, and then to like switch your muscle memory to a different weapon and not remember everything and have to learn all those moves and then go back to your other weapon. Like, I don't see a lot of people doing that right off the bat. I think people are gonna have to play with a weapon a bit, play with another weapon a bit, and then maybe, you know, mix them together and obviously change things up depending on what monsters they're fighting. But I think that's good. That adds, you know, another dimension to the gameplay, a little bit more complexity. And complexity is generally good in a game as long as it's, you know, understood. And obviously understanding you can use 2 weapons is not hard to understand, but being able to do it is a whole nother issue. The only really negative about Monster Hunter Wilds that I have to say from playing the beta, and something that I was suspicious about after playing at Gamescom and Tokyo Game Show, was the performance. Obviously, when you have these big open worlds with lots of draw distances and lots of numbers of dinosaurs and monsters, moving around on the landscape with special weather effects and everything in the detail that Monster Hunter Wilds has, you take a hit performance. Even on performance mode, it's not that great compared to the regular mode. So I think there are people going to be complaining about that a little bit. It doesn't really impact the gameplay negatively, in my opinion, or at least not negatively enough to be like a full-blown gripe. But it will be pointed out by some people, and obviously if you're playing on a high-powered PC, probably not going to have this issue. But if you're playing on console, it's probably not going to be quite the performance that you want. Luckily, Monster Hunter's gameplay is not so fast-paced that it really matters that much, but I do expect some people to have an issue with that. So that wraps up our video on the Monster Hunter Wilds beta. What do you guys make of it so far? Have you played yet? Are you waiting until this weekend? What weapons are you going to be playing? I want to know these things from you. Let me know in the comments below.